I don't know if something like this ever happened to you, but when my father was in his low teens, maybe 13, 14, 15, something like that, the school assignment, the English class assignment that day was that he go back home, and by tomorrow that everybody in the class compose a poem and bring it into class the next day. And my father told me that he experienced a kind of ecstasy that was new to him, and in the course of this ecstasy he composed 5 poems and brought them in the next day. So this was unusual. It was unusual to him. It was very unusual to his family, who were kind of astonished at this outpouring of 5 poems, 2 of which still exist, and one of which was pretty heavily anthologized. So this is a poem by, say, a 14-year-old or so, which became part of Dad's work in the course of the major poetical part of his life. So this was the beginning of something that was unusual, and he lived in Minnesota, in Austin, Minnesota, and this poetic drive, he continued to write and write and write and write as a teenager and as a young man. This poetic drive carried him, and carried him, in a sense, carried him out of Austin when he was at the end of his high school career. And 2 things happened at the same time that were coincidental. There was a major collapse in his father's business practice. His father was quite well-to-do as the second in command at Hormel Food Company in Minnesota, and there was a dramatic embezzlement that took place, and this ruined. My grandfather was not responsible in any way, but it ruined the business for a period of time. And at the same time, my father's mother was in the process of dying of cancer. So, in effect, what happened was, in one year's span, my father found the destruction of his mother and also the collapse of his father's business. So that was the major pain that harmed my father's soul. As he often said, he writes. He doesn't say he writes now, but I mean he wrote in order to heal his soul from the pain that had come to him when he was 17 or 18. This desire to write took him outside of Austin, eventually took him to Dartmouth for college. After college, took him west about on tramp steamers from San Francisco across the Pacific, working his way eventually all the way around the globe to England, where he matriculated at Cambridge University at St. John's College, and where he was surrounded by what was then the great atmosphere of that great university, among other young writers of the time who were beginning to write. And so that was, this poetical drive took him around the entire globe. In fact, his first book of poems was a book called A Bravery of Earth, which was, he braved the whole earth in order to get to where he needed to be. You don't need to hear all of his biography in the detail, but the point I'm trying to make here is that he had a drive that was unique, and it took him out and took him into a world that was filled with people who were writing seriously. Then he mixed with all of these people. He was a very friendly, cordial guy. He brought people to him, and they were happy to come to him because he was friendly and he wasn't at war with anybody. There are a lot of writers who are at war with that group of writers over there, and they're at war with that group of writers over there. And he wasn't. He didn't care. He cared about excellence in writing, excellence in poetry. But if you were a beat poet or a free verse poet or a conventional poet or a sonetist or whatever. It didn't matter to him. It was the outflowing of the muse through you that was interesting to him and to my mother.